My guest today is an amazing human being, Cairo Eubanks. I was connected with her through a mutual friend, and I'm so grateful for that because I learned of the amazing work that she's doing that I think that you as a parent need to hear about. Because if you have a child that is looking into getting into activism or just, doing something in their community bigger than themselves, you're gonna love the information that she shares. Cairo is not just an activist, but she was a beauty pageant winner. She is Miss Black Florida 2021. And due to a personal experience, she created Bringing the Globe. So without further ado, here's Cairo.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so, so welcome. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm so grateful that you're taking the time to come here and share your story. I was, reading about you and everything that you've done, and it's pretty impressive. Can we start though with the personal side, like who you are? Tell us a little bit about like the story behind your name, because I think people will like that since you shared that with me before. And tell us like how you led up to where you are today.
I would absolutely love to, Dali. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Cairo, just like Egypt. And oftentimes when I'm introducing myself, I always say Cairo, just like Egypt. And the reason being is that my parents, I'm Jamaican and American. My parents, they wanted me to have a strong connection to the African continent. So myself, as well as my siblings, were all named after capitals within African countries or an African country itself. My name is Cairo. My brother's name is Dakar, like Senegal. And then my sister's name is Sudan. And we always say that she is a country within herself. That's why she had to be named after a whole country and not just a capital. But it's really allowed me to be a lot more curious about the world around me, just because at the end of the day, you wonder, what does your name mean? And when you look it up and you see, for example, that it's connected to a country that has such rich history and culture, it makes you want to actually go to some of these places. And so I'm really fortunate to have traveled to Cairo, Egypt, where I was actually inside of the airport. And I remember hearing Cairo everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only Cairo around anymore. Because it just brought a lot of realization, for example, how much my name means, not just to myself, but to others. I actually remember being at the passport immigration area, and they were looking at my passport and they were saying, is this your real name? And they brought other officers over and they were just like, oh my goodness, like your name is really Cairo. And so, this cultural exchange, this idea of being able to connect with others from different backgrounds, different languages, but still having a way in which we're able to open up doors through a name or, through a commonality is something that's really near and dear to my heart. As it relates to the work that I'm doing, I would say, especially as it relates to cyberbullying and harassment, my story is actually quite interesting. Unfortunately, I experienced online serial harassment when I was in college, and there was this guy, let's just call him Andrew. Okay, so there was this guy named Andrew, and he was sending messages to me, and I didn't really know him very well outside of like some social circles. I just knew of him, and I feel like he obviously knew of me. And I was told and notified that some of my pictures off of Facebook, like my profile picture, etc., was posted on this lewd Instagram account that he had created, where he was putting, disgusting captions on photos, not just of myself, but also of others around me. And I wasn't even on Instagram at the time, so I wasn't even aware that this was happening until someone actually told me. And I just remember being shocked and sort of disgusted. And then I blocked him on various social media platforms and he kept popping up. Now, fast forward to 2019, towards the end of 2019, I I got another friend request from him and I just said, you know what? I'm gonna write a post about this on Facebook. So I shared my experience, and 150 comments later, 30 other individuals actually came to me and told me he did this to me too. He even tried to follow me home when we were on campus. He sent me explicit photos that were not consensual whatsoever. He tried to create a fake academic study group or a study and say that that he got sign off from a college administrator to try to ask for inappropriate photos from people as well. And for years, some of these people had been honestly tormented by him in different ways. And I just said, you know what, something has to be done. So I created a private group where they all gave me all of the screenshots, all of the basically the receipts of the things that he had done over the years. And we had filed police reports. We had spoken to our administration. We'd actually went to where he was volunteering and shared with them some of the lewd things that he had done in an effort to bring attention to what he was doing to us and to say, basically, this is not the sort of person that you want to have associated with your organization. But despite, filing police reports across the state, because we were in different states, after graduating college, we just still felt helpless. And so what I did was I am really grateful to have various networks within cybersecurity, IT, the mental health field, and academia, as well as community development. And I told them my story and I said to them, what can I do? I wanted to get more guidance. And the advice that they gave me, I felt like gave me a lot of relief. But then I also felt like it's not just me who's experiencing this. And especially during the pandemic, we were all, especially when we were quarantined, we were all online and we were not able to necessarily be out and about. So there was a rise in cyberbullying and harassment that had, taken place. And I just said, what about the kids that might be experiencing this? Because we have this saying within my organization, Bringing the Globe, that bullying no longer ends when the school bell rings. So even when kids are out of school, they're not just being bullied at school on campus, but they're also dealing with this after school hours. So I was just thinking about that, especially during the pandemic. And what I decided to do was I thought it was going to be a one-time conference called Operation Stop Cyber Harassment. And what I did was we had parent and teen breakout rooms and experts from the cybersecurity IT field, from the mental health sector. We had Broward County school district leaders and, plethora of different sectors come in and talk to both parents and teens in separate breakout rooms, providing resources that many of them did not even know existed at the time. And the feedback that I got from the kids, 13 to 18 years old, because that was really what our focus was on, which were middle school and high school students, they were saying, when are you coming to my school? Like, when are you going to do a presentation? What happens next? I was like, oh my goodness, I just thought I was doing this as, a one-time conference just because I just wanted to do something. And I realized that there was a need for more. So we created this as an annual conference. And then what I realized was that, wait a second, these resources are really being accessible through, I was just doing it as an individual at the time, but it was only accessible once a year. And I'm thinking, bullying happens and cyber harassment happens year round. It doesn't just occur only in March, of every year. Unfortunately, it occurs more than that. So that being said, I actually went back to about 200 and actually almost close to about 300 students, surveying them, asking them, what else do you want us to talk about? What sort of topics are you wanting to have discussed that maybe are not being shared in some of the after school programs that you're a part of, or even within your school? And based off of their answers, we created 2 community service hour certificate courses for teens, one being Operation Stop Cyber Harassment, which is all about internet safety. Being able to use technology to empower, not harm others, as well as the importance of being a peer mentor and advocate. And then we created Storytelling with a Purpose, which is all about telling your story, connecting them to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then also creating a blueprint for your future career or advocacy work that you would like to do. Because we realized after doing, countless presentations, both virtually as well as in person, that there are kids who really want to do more in their community. They just don't know how or where to start. And one thing that we realized, like especially when I was doing a presentation at an Everglades High, I was doing an assembly presentation in front of about 600 students. I was having kids talking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and they were saying, this goal on SDG 4 is all about quality education, and this is so important to me. And they explained why, where they were saying climate action is something that I want to get more involved into because I'm seeing, for example, plastic in the water, and I see these animals actually eating this plastic. I know it's not good for them. We have to do something about it. There was this one young lady who came up and she was a little shy. She wasn't someone who I could tell really volunteered to raise her hand very often. And she started to talk about how she was an artist and she was, all about, for example, spreading awareness through art. And then she got upset. She said that there was discrimination that she saw that her fellow artists and illustrators were experiencing, and she was just like, I don't know what to do about this. What do I do? And what initially started as a storytelling with a purpose presentation that was being done in schools, I said, you know what? We need to create a course for this too. So this is a way for teens to be able to do meaningful work in their communities based off of their passions, their strength, their identities, to make sure that they're not just fulfilling graduation hours for community service just for the sake of doing that, but instead, how can they use what they love to do and connect it with community organizations around them to make a difference? Because it takes more than 40 hours over a 4-year span to be able to do work that's meaningful, right? And so we have to make sure that these community service hours are not just being done just to get them out of the way to graduate, but how can we be able to inspire and incentivize more kids to actually do more hours and to really align what they care about with organizations that already exist?
Wow. That is, your story is amazing. So you started with something that so many individuals experience, and most of
Yes.
them don't do pretty much anything. Some don't even report it, which
Mhm.
is sad because, when you report, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping so many others. Had you
Mhm.
not posted that story on your Facebook account, or social media account, so many of those people would have never known that they were not the only ones, and that there was somebody out there willing to get into the trenches with them
Mhm.
and do something about it. Because I think that so many of us, when we're harassed, especially women, we're so afraid to
Mhm.
speak up because we feel like, oh, they're just going to blame me. Nobody's going to stand up for me. So you never say anything. And
Mhm.
even when it is a situation of just school bullying, let's say something a lot less severe, even then, kids just do not report. And I cannot stress how important it is to just have that courage, just like you, and do something about it. Because look at you now. This is incredible. You've
Thank
done
you.
so much, and I'm very grateful because I know that the youth today, they have that activism mindset, and we
Mhm.
need to, I think, take advantage of that. So you were saying they were bringing up their own issues of like, hey, what do I do about it? And all they need is somebody like you and me to guide them and tell them, well, here are the options. How do
Mhm.
you want to tackle it? What feels, best for you? So tell me more about working with the UN.
Absolutely, I would love to. So, I am the youth representative for New Future Foundation to United Nations. New Future Foundation is an ECOSOC accredited NGO who's been working alongside with the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations for quite a while now. And so when I became a youth representative several years ago, I actually came up to the executive president of New Future Foundation and I said, I want to work with you. I've always wanted to be associated with the United Nations and do international development. Where do I start? And so I think that, something that we talk about in Storytelling with a Purpose certificate course is the importance of mentorship. And so I'm so grateful to Queen Mother Dr. Blakely for allowing me to be mentored by her, because it allowed me an opportunity to get actually engaged with some of the work that the United Nations has been doing, especially as it relates to youth focus, youth-led initiatives. And so that being said, fast forward, as a youth representative for New Future Foundation, I applied and was selected to be a part of the United Nations Department of Global Communications Civil Society Youth Representative Steering Committee, which acts as an advisory committee to assist the Department of Global Communications with events and programming that are centered around youth, as well as providing a perspective. There are about 1,500 non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, that are associated with the Department of Global Communications, and they're youth representatives that are appointed or selected to represent these organizations, at the United Nations, to continue to do advocacy work in civil society or in the community. So just where you and me are, for example, making sure that there's more awareness of some of the programs that the UN has. And so that's really the majority of the work that I started to do in 2020. And then this year, I'm really excited to share that I was selected to be the co-chair for this steering committee. And so like I said, a lot of the things that we do, a lot of our focus is engaging youth representatives who are already associated with the Department of Global Communications. But my personal passion is, outreach and advocacy on the ground, and making sure that these programs and these events, all of the work that the United Nations is doing from a global international sphere, making sure that that's actually accessible, making sure that these resources are known on the ground. And so that being said, that's part of the reason why I did that presentation, Storytelling with a Purpose, at Everglades High. And that's also why we had, I'm so excited to share this too. We had the first ever youth engagement panel at the Florida International Trade and Cultural Expo, which is known as FITCI. FITCI is an international conference that's organized by Broward County government, and there are about 2,000 attendees that attend every single year from about 60 different countries around the world. Everyone comes to Fort Lauderdale, and there are panels on doing trade and business with different countries, their prime ministers, their presidents, former presidents, ambassadors, dignitaries, trade organizations, and community organizations as well, that come together and they're able to share, the work that they are doing within their regions. And when I was first invited to become a part of FITCI, I actually did it as the co-moderator for the Doing Business with Africa panel, which was sponsored by Global Ovid Days Seminary and University. I say all of that to say that when I first got, acquainted with the work that FITCI was doing on the ground, I said, oh my goodness, there needs to be more youth present, because I didn't see anyone around my age too, really. I think I was like one of the youngest people there. And I said, there's so many opportunities to learn more about the work that is being done, through different countries, through different continents, as well as the cultural exchange components that are vital for kids to be exposed to the world around them. There's so many kids, for example, in Miami-Dade County or Broward County, who have never left their city. They've never left their county. And yet the world is coming every single year to them, to their area, once a year for 2 days. And so I said, I had already pitched this idea of a youth panel back in 2019. And through the work that I was doing and could demonstrate, information about the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll explain in just a moment, how it was an opportunity to actually show the steering committee, as well as my advisors at the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations, that there needed to be more outreach and visibility of the UN Civil Society Unit and the Department of Global Communications here in Broward County, just because this is a place that is very close in proximity to Central America, to South America, to the Caribbean. And then Florida as a state does about $9 billion in trade with South Africa. So there's a lot that's going on in Florida, especially South Florida, where it is just a mixture of so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds. I thought, you know what? We're bringing the world to kids here in Broward County, and we're going to do it through the Youth Engagement Panel. And so that being said, October 19th and 20th was the 2022 FITSE, and we had that first youth engagement panel, and we had my mentor and advisor, Ms. Hawa Diallo, who's the chief of the Civil Society Unit, actually come in. She flew in from the UN headquarters. We had the former co-chair of the steering committee present. We also had Broward County district leaders as well from, school districts specifically, talking about their stories, talking about what inspired them to get into their work of advocacy. And then we had students who participated online as well as in person. And this was the biggest participation of youth that have ever taken place at FITSE. And I'm really proud to share that, just because I have this motto that I see myself as a vessel. I see myself as a vessel full of, opportunities that my mentors have given to me. And it's important to then pour into others and to make sure that these resources, that this knowledge, that these skills are being given to others, because it's not, you can't take this information with you, when you go into the next life or whenever you pass, whatever your belief is. However, it's important to pour into the next generation of leaders. And I say that our leaders, these students, are the leaders of today and not tomorrow. So it's important to make sure that there is exposure, empowerment that's happening right now whenever the opportunity is presented.
Wow. Wow. You're doing so much. So if a parent is listening right now and they want to get their child involved, can they reach out to you, or would you be able to direct them as to like where they can go to get involved?
Absolutely. So you can actually reach out to me at info, at bringingtheglobe.com. And depending on what it is that you are looking for in terms of information, you can also visit our website, www.bringingtheglobe.com, where we share some information. We're actually going to be launching our certificate courses in December 2022. So please look out for that. And then as it relates to the Civil Society Unit and the United Nations, I highly recommend that you Google United Nations Civil Society Unit. There's the website. There are also newsletters that are created. There's a civil society newsletter that you can subscribe to. Their email blasts once a week or bi-weekly, depending on, the events that are going on at the United Nations. I highly recommend that you sign up for that newsletter. And then during the pandemic, there was a youth newsletter that was created that's youth focused. And so if you want your kids, for example, to know a little bit more about some of the youth programs that are happening virtually or in person at the United Nations headquarters, please be sure to subscribe. It's so important to recognize, for example, that there is a civil society section that is, doing so much work in terms of resource sharing and giving information on their platform. And so we, as, steering committee members, so outside of the committee that I have as the CEO of Bringing the Globe, I'm also doing this work associated with the United Nations. And what our individual calls are is to make sure that we are sharing these links, we're sharing this information, we're making sure that we are, quote unquote, bringing the United Nations and these youth programs to the youth and to civil society, just because we recognize that that is what our responsibility is to just bring awareness of the different programs that exist. Also, something that I would like to share too is about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals are actually a call to action and targets that were created in different sectors of society to be able to achieve by 2030. There's a 2030 agenda, and there's some goals. We all have goals, right? But there's some global goals that have been created by member states and through the United Nations, just to be able to make different progress. For example, as it relates to and the environment, on gender equality, on quality education, and more. So these are 17 goals that exist. And if you would like to learn more about those, that's sdgs.un.org. And it's important, as I said, sometimes people think that what the United Nations is doing is that it's just all about ambassadors and member states and countries, and they don't quite realize that there are linkages between what is happening on a global level to what's happening on a local level. And that's why my personal mission, especially as it relates to advocacy and awareness, is providing, courses and resources that make local global and global local.
Wow, you are involved in so much, and I think whatever youth is able to work with you, they're gonna get so much value from working with you because you have so much to offer, so much knowledge, and so much opportunity for people who want to get involved, which is something that I think kids sometimes don't do because they don't know someone who has access and the knowledge to these resources. And one of the things that I feel like it's really important, Cairo, is when kids are at this state of having, say, like anxiety, mental health challenges, the one thing that I've seen works to help them get out of that funk or that stage is being in service. It's like something lights up in
Yes.
you, a purpose, being of purpose, and having something to do that's bigger than yourself can definitely help. And to your point about, starting from something small like you did, with your personal challenge to what you've created today, how you've been involved. I think that it's great for kids to also hear that story because that could be their story. And a lot of them, they're
Absolutely.
like, oh, it's just me. I was like, I don't know anything, or it's not that important what I've done. And then, you start sharing it and you realize, wow, there's so many other people on that same boat and they want to do something about it with you. So thank you so
Exactly.
much for doing all of this. You also have something coming up with CBS, right?
Yes, I do. I do. Thank you so much for that. And before I go into the PSA, I just want to touch on the point that you just made, Dali, which is that people have to realize, for example, that they are not alone. You're not alone in what you are experiencing. And no matter how small you think it is, just sharing your story can really impact others. I mean, I could have kept it to myself. I could have just filed that police report and gone on with my merry way. But when you think about, for example, how individual actions can be able to make a collective impact, you recognize that all of our voices coming together, they make us stronger, they make us resilient. And to the point that you just made about teens, for example, who may be dealing with, different issues internally or externally that they are experiencing, I can't help but think about some of the teens that I've worked with, or some of the teens who've talked, come up to me and spoken to me after doing a panel or after speaking at their school. I actually did a assembly presentation at a local Miami school where there are about 300 girls who were selected to sit in on this panel on women's empowerment. And there were so many girls who came up to me in tears, telling me how grateful they were to have someone who looked like them, someone who understood, for example, some of the issues that come with workplace discrimination just based off of having natural hair. I'm really grateful to say that I've never experienced any sort of discrimination like that while being associated with the United Nations. But I remember being 14 years old, and you can't see this now, but I have really long locks. I've had my locks for about 14 years now. And I would be told, oh, that's great that you want to, do international development work and, be associated with the United Nations, but what are you going to do with your hair when you graduate? And making me feel, for example, that I had to change the way that I looked, just to be accepted. And that's a struggle that a lot of Black and Brown children, I feel like, face, especially when it relates to natural hair, feeling like the hair texture that you have, for example, may not necessarily be accepted. And so, that being said, I see myself as a visual representation of the role model that I wish that I'd had growing up, someone who was younger, closer to my age, someone who could understand some of the things that we kind of go through, and just remind them that it does not matter. Okay, your passion is stronger than those naysayers. And as long as you have mentors and you put yourself into places where you are able to get this knowledge and get opportunities to, elevate your platform and get the skill sets that you need in order to make sure that you can get to the next level, it is possible. And there are people doing the work, and you just have to know their names and you just have to know that they exist. So Okay, so that was a bit of a tangent, but I just feel very strongly about this because it's something that I experienced as a little girl. And so, when I became a pageant queen, for example, and I was one of the first title holders with locks within the Miss America organization, I would wear my sash and crown proudly. And I wish you could see the little girls and their eyes just grow wide. And they're like, you're a pageant queen, and I even had oh, she was so sweet. It was for Jamaican Independence Day, and it was a little girl with locks, and she saw me and she went from being really shy to saying, can I take a picture with you? And she had the biggest smile because she just started her locks, and she was like a little, timid at first about her hair, but she was so proud because she said, there's someone who looks like me who's doing cool things. I want to be just like them. So we have to make sure that we are being visible, so that way, younger generations are able to see, for example, that they're not reinventing the wheel. They're just innovating and building upon the successes that we're creating. So that being said, fast forward as you're relating to the PSA, we at Bringing the Globe have partnered with Neighbors for Neighbors, which is a CBS4 media affiliate, on a PSA that is titled Digital Citizen. So what is a digital citizen? Something that we are sharing and that we shared at our booth at the Florida International Trade and Cultural Expo, where this PSA was partially being filmed and some vignettes were being created, is that there are about 5 billion people who actively use the internet every day. That means that there are about 5 billion digital citizens. And what does it mean to be a digital citizen? It is the way in which we interact with others. It's the way in which we use technology and social media to be responsible online. It is being aware of the sort of information that we are providing. It's a way in which we can use what we're doing in the physical world and connect it to the digital world to bring more awareness and exposure to some of the passions that we have in the community, and to share with others, for example, different causes that exist to bring light to some of the issues that we are facing in our societies. And so that being said, we're actually planning on launching this on TV in January. So it'll be towards the start of the 2023 year. And I'm really excited about this because I just feel as though, for example, we have to know what it means to be a digital citizen, and we have to make sure that we are using our platforms, because we all have platforms. It doesn't matter what your following looks like. There are people who are watching what you are doing and what you are saying, that we are being mindful of how we treat others, as well as how we use the internet and technology to make sure that we are making the internet safer for everyone. So, what does it mean to be a bad digital citizen? Hacking, for example, spreading misinformation, bullying online. That is a big no-no. Why would you bully someone online? And there are different ways in which you can use the internet and use social media to spread hurt and to spread hate. But we want to be able to share that there are peaceful communities that are being built online with the message to empower. And that's important, to use the tools that we have very conscientiously.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I feel like that's going to be such a wonderful resource for people to access because television, the media, of course, it's powerful. You can you can teach children just about anything if you just know how to tell that story. And if you tell that story well enough, they'll always remember it, and therefore they'll remember that lesson. Cairo, thank you so, so much for coming on here and sharing about all the work. I mean, I don't know how you manage everything. It's so much. And I can also imagine because I can feel your passion that at times it must feel a little bit heavy because you hear the stories, you want to help, and you know that you just cannot help every single person, but what you're doing is impactful, and every single person that you're touching, I'm pretty sure that they're just an extension of all of that hard work that you're putting out there.
Thank you so much. And it's definitely not easy, I will say that. There was an article that was actually published by Palm Beach County that was talking about another there were some students who actually got in trouble. They got arrested and they are facing expulsion of 1 year within their school because they might have decided that it was funny to say that they were going to hurt others at the school and they had made a threat against their school. We have to realize, for example, that this impacts so many kids from a mental health perspective. I know my little sister, for example, she was going to school in Broward County, and there was a threat at her school of a school shooting where someone wrote anonymously, "Oh, don't come to school tomorrow." And there was a little kid who wrote on a gym bench, "If we die, heart." I don't
Mm,
remember
that's horrible.
experiencing having to think about these sort of things when I was her age, and so I realized, for example, there's so many kids that need to be reached out to. And that's why we created these online courses, because I figure, okay, I can't meet every single one. We can't meet every single one, but at the very least, if we're creating platforms where kids can come together, this is an opportunity to be able to impact more lives as quickly as possible. So it's all about just trying to find ways to just get the message out as quickly as possible, as well as recognizing that we are also not alone in the work that we're doing. And I thank you, Dali, for all of the messages that you are putting out to just spread awareness and to make sure that you're empowering both parents and children as it relates to bullying. So we're doing this together. That's the beautiful thing, is that there's a community of us doing this work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny you say that because there are so many people that have no idea that you and I exist. There are so many people that come to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a thing? Like
Mhm.
that's a job?" Like, yeah, it is. I
Mhm.
mean, we kind of created it ourselves too, because of a personal experience. But Cairo, thank you so, so much. I wish you the best. And if you need any type of support, you just reach out to me and I'll do whatever I can. And before we
Thank
go,
you.
where can people find out more about you?
Absolutely. On Instagram, I am at officially underscore CAIRO, just like Egypt. And then as it relates to Bringing the Globe, it's www.bringingtheglobe.com. And our email is info@bringingtheglobe.com. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Cairo. Thank you. I hope that you really enjoyed that conversation with Cairo. As you see, she has a wealth of knowledge and she has connections to a lot of people that can help, not just with whatever your idea is, but start something. There are a lot of people out there looking for an opportunity to find somebody like you that wants to start something in your community. So reach out to her. And if anything, go to her website, check out the courses, and spread the word. Thank you once again for being here, for listening. If you really like this episode, please do me a favor and submit a review. Your reviews are super, super valuable. They help other people like you learn more about the podcast and give it a chance. All right, until next time.
Hey, did you like that episode? If you did, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you may be listening and write a review. If you want more tips or some behind the scenes videos, make sure to follow my mom at Dalitalks on Instagram. You can turn on notifications for her posts and stories as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. See you next time.